welcome back to Sinews of War. In the previous episode, Nassau moved out in Florida to fight the Spanish army. Their army was smaller than ours and was relatively easy to overwhelm, with Nassau taking out their support and then destroying their infantry lines with a massive attack towards the end. Callumber, with now nothing to do in the Americas, is sailing for Africa in order to go and hunt some Spanish trade ships. Back in Europe, we got some bad news. France declared war on us once again. None of their allies joined them, but they are going to be a thorn in our side because our territories are undefended against them. The defences we did have was General Voss, and he was busy attacking Savoy further south. In the battle, Savoy's army sallied out and used melee tactics against our line, crashing through with large numbers, but in the end our superior positioning and training allowed us to win. So with Savoy now crushed, we found the Spanish were bordering us from Milan, which made it difficult to move out to go and fight the French. We're going to need to make some decisions about how we're going to conduct this war. But first things first, I started hiring a massive amount of new troops back at home to try and get something together before the French could strike. Now let's continue. Didn't you get the post? Nassau has Florida and asked permission to march on Georgia. Don't you see what kind of an opportunity this is? If we make peace with the Spanish, we would throw it away.
Throw it away? Throw it away? Are you sure you want to use those words? For even a man raised in a blasted ditch can see the value of this trade. I say it again. Make peace with Spain and have Voss crush the French. In your plan, we either release the Italians to make war on us again, or let the French have their way with us. You have gone too hard in your rhetoric. You see nothing but the issues of tomorrow. What of next year? What of the world where Nassau is muzzled and Voss set free in Europe? If Voss saves us from the French, after already defeating Savoy single-handedly, where does that leave him? He will run to become a stadtholder and he will win. So what? That's the will of the people, and you want to risk the death of our nation to avoid it.
Voss is the death of our nation. Who is he anyway? He's no gentleman, no man of the United Provinces. He's a vagabond who found a braid for his jacket, and everyone seems to act like he is not worthy of a court-martial for usurping the command of our men.
A laughable sentiment. I reject you out of hand, sir. You have become blinded by some emotional investment in this. What it is I do not care to know, but let all present be clear that Voss's unconventional nature is the key to surviving this ordeal.
Gentlemen, enough has been said. I say this, let us all retire and vote on this matter once we've had our take of the afternoon's banquet. Don't you agree? If we must.
A wise idea, Your Highness. Time to think will allow us all to foster the right decision.
So welcome back. Here in Europe, I'm trying to decide what to do with Voss. We have enemies, of course, in the Spanish, just there to the east, but we need to go back west and then north to go and fight France, or gamble that France won't attack in the near future and try and build up another army before they move. So overall, it's not a particularly secure situation. Voss's army already damaged. I can't really afford to split it and leave some behind because it's already weak, and I can't afford to replenish the troops. So really, we've got all kinds of catches, and I decided I was going to enact a strategy I've been thinking about for a couple of turns actually, which first involves going and besieging this settlement. We are not going to attack it or risk this battle because the settlement is so worthless that capturing it really isn't worth it, even if there was barely any Spanish troops inside. We're just besieging it to put pressure on Spain so that I can make this deal, go and try and get peace off them. Now previously I actually had seen if they wanted peace and they were absolutely against it, and now they are willing to go in for a white peace, and this wasn't too interesting, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought actually maybe this is okay, because really, we've taken so much from Spain already that this white peace is a bit of a facade. It's not like we're submitting to an equal arrangement, because we are going to keep all of their American colonies with this deal, so I ended up taking it, and hopefully this is going to be beneficial and the right thing to do. There wasn't too much more I could take from Spain right now, so perhaps this is the right time for peace. I also noticed I wasn't trading with the Maratha Confederacy, which I thought I was. They were outraged by the concept of trading with us dirty foreigners, so it just wasn't going to happen. So Nassau is teleported back to Florida now that we are at peace with Spain, and his next target is going to be Louisiana. Basically, I'm looking at them over there because they have a dock and we need to get a port in mainland America, and Louisiana is of course a protectorate of France with whom we are now at war, so it's going to be quite diplomatically easy for us to justify just going to war with Louisiana. For Voss, the peace now means he has more options. He doesn't need to defend against an attack from Milan, so I'm just going to leave. This is, of course, still going to leave us open to a rebellion from Savoy, so it doesn't mean we're actually going to definitely keep it. You can see the public order here, absolutely abysmal, because it's their capital. They are very outraged about being occupied, and I can't build any new troops. I don't really have any troops to go and put in there, of course, because Voss needs to take his men with him. Overall, not a good situation. We're just going to kind of wing it and see what happens. Now I'm starting to try and get trade with the other Mediterranean states, like the Italian states and Genoa. I had to give these guys some technology in order to get it, but I thought it was worth improving my relations down here so we don't get a random war started coming up from the south, which is exactly what we were trying to avoid by going and destroying Savoy. So with that all done, the next thing to consider is the Barbary states, who you may remember had raided my trade and besieged one of my trade ports. But now, of course, Almanda, our naval commander, can stop his blockades of the Spanish because we're at peace and can start coming to sort this out. Now, I couldn't move into the Mediterranean because of this random Barbary states ship in a port, which zone of control was covering the whole sea. So I had to go and blockade the port and then move away. I'm not sure why it works like that. I think I should be able to just run past. But anyway, so it's just one Zebek here, so we're going to quickly sink that, and we're not going to take it into our fleet. We are going to sell that ship for prize money since we are very low on funds. Now we need to take out their main fleet here in Marseille's trade port, and unfortunately because they're in the port, that means I'm going to have to move a unit from Voss's army to flush them out and get them out to sea. And now they're out there, we have the chance both to repair the port and engage them in a decisive fight. So we move over with the fleet. This enemy fleet is actually 4 6th rates, so not all that bad, but we have 4 5th rates in our fleet, plus a bunch of other things, so a definitive advantage. Now I actually considered fighting this one. I thought it might be interesting, but we do have a relatively large advantage, so I ended up skipping it, going for the auto-resolve. The result was perfect, and we captured one of the 6th rates, which I will take into the fleet, since that is a decent warship. So we've really cleared the situation up a little bit with this peace with Spain. I think it probably was the right time to take that deal. We just have to try and hang on to Savoy and now turn our attention fully to France to make sure they don't get the drop on us. I have decided there will be peace with the United Provinces. No one may speak against this decision. For those of you who are disappointed by this news, let me tell you this. It is your fault that this is happening. You poisoned my ear with demands of war against the Dutch. You failed to see how they outnumbered us so heavily, how the fall of France was not a fluke but evidence of their skill at arms. You were the ones who then counselled that we wait until the time was right, holding our forces back while the Dutch built a cage around them. And so the Americas are all but lost, the Dutch have more of Europe than ever, and our prestige as a nation lies in tatters. That, my old friends, is why we must bow to peace. In an ironic twist, Genoa comes in and declares war on me at this stage, so although I worked hard to get that freedom from threat in Savoy, Genoa next door is now going to come in. Luckily, they don't have an army, just a couple of units, and they can't attack me right now, even though I had nothing defending Savoy, so actually nothing came of that. I was more worried than I needed to be when I first saw it. And now, the Barbary States come in to hit Genoa and block their trade, so thanks to the Barbary States for getting a little bit of revenge for me there. So we've now got a rake spawning at long last, which I've needed for a while after my first rake got assassinated a long time ago, because we need to start bringing down the Catholics who are hanging around in Europe. This one in Paris needs to go so that we can start spreading Protestantism. That will improve public order in the long term by a small amount, and we're really lucky there, getting a 30% chance and succeeding. So next up, the French army we need to be concerned with. It's still sitting right where it is in Alsace-Lorraine, and that really changes the game because I expected them to go on the attack right away. And the fact that they're still there, and they're still not within striking distance of one of my settlements, and the fact that I'm now recruiting units and my settlements are more strongly defended, really turns things around. They've moved out too slowly, and in fact, I'm thinking now that Voss is not going to go and fight the French. He is going to go back to Savoy, both to suppress any possible rebellions and of course to defend it against Genoa. And if Genoa don't build an army in the next couple of turns, we can just go and attack them. So what I'm going to do as a slight compromise is take a few of the units out of Voss's army to continue moving north to join the force I'm going to gather for that war with France, but Voss himself will take the rest right back to Savoy. Now the army he had there wasn't quite enough to get public order to a perfect stage there, but I remembered I had that one extra unit sitting in the docks there, so I can pull up that cav unit to go and join the garrison, and that will finally turn things so that public order is stable. Fantastic news. Genoa definitely won't be able to take it from that position, and next turn we will be in a position to take Genoa potentially, unless they do something to reinforce very quickly. So that theatre, this part of the theatre is looking okay. I suspect that war's going to be fine, but the war with France still a bit iffy. Right now I'm going to start gathering up the forces I have available, nearly half a stack when the militia who are already in Brussels are pulled into this force, which is now gathering at a farm and in the east end of Flanders. We need to pull up Voss's old troops as well. It's going to take them 2 turns to arrive, so I'm going to build up more troops and they're going to join the army next time as well, and we're going to have almost a full stack of troops available there, and France still 2 turns away from making an attack. We can easily now defend and react to their movements if they make any aggressive moves. So let's see what they do in the intense sequence. They come right up into Flanders and take that industrial zone. Quite handy because it's near where I'm gathering my army, so it looks like it is going to be possible to get a decisive battle with France going there. Genoa don't really do anything there, and Westphalia really cheekily take France's star fort right by their capital there. Nice little move from them. So I'm looking at the French army and seeing that it's mostly cavalry, and then I'm looking at my tech and making sure I've got square already researched, so if it comes to a battle with this mostly cav army, we are going to have an advantage by fielding lots of infantry. We've got plenty of cav of our own as well. This army overall a little bit unbalanced actually towards having cav, lots of cav in there. Now, as I was gathering up, I suddenly realised something. The French army is possibly near enough to Brussels that it could actually go around the zone of control of my army and take it. And my army is just too far away to reinforce if they did that, and I thought that was worrying. These militia are going to take that star fort outside of Paris so that France can't go and attack Paris without having to fight that one unit. It's just a little sort of backstop. And I'm going to move extra units over to Brussels from Amsterdam and the main force back to be closer to Brussels so that Brussels is within its zone of control so that France can't do that cheeky move I was just mentioning. Now in America, Nassau is in position. He could go and attack Louisiana right now. This turn he could go and take that settlement, but the problem is Louisiana have a navy there, and that is some concern. I'm checking here their diplomatic status, and that's actually okay. They don't have allies who are going to come in. They're at war with Poland for some reason, so that's not a problem. But this navy, which is actually pretty good, would be a problem. It could go and raid my trade, destroy my docks if I'm not careful, and my navy is here in Africa, and it's going to come right back. Calambra went over there to fight the Spanish. We're not fighting the Spanish anymore, so as soon as he arrived, he received news and is going to turn back to go to America. So it's going to take him 2 turns to get back, and then we'll be in a position to attack Louisiana. Meanwhile, Voss is going to take this chance to attack Genoa. First, we destroy one of their units guarding these ports. That's going to destroy their trade income as well. Their army outside the towns of conscripts, militia and a general actually having a moderate representation on the balance bar because our army has so few troops left in it. Voss's army has fought so many battles, it's really weak, and as it goes into the siege, the enemy do actually have the advantage by just having loads of firelock armed citizenry in there. This army is not in a good position and we have no money to replenish it. I decided to pop over to America and cancel the construction of something in order to get a tiny bit of money so that I could prioritize healing a couple of units, but it takes 2 turns for a unit to be replenished. So if Genoa comes out and attacks me this turn, we are still going to have this very, very weakened army to play with. So as we move on, let's see what happens. The French reinforce their position, but otherwise don't move. That's perfect for me. I can now gather my full strength together and potentially just attack them where they are or go around them. The Mughal Empire is still trying to get an alliance with me, this time offering some money and some exchanges of technology. I really don't want to accept this deal because they still are quite powerful, controlling about half of India, but they're on the decline. The Maratha Confederacy is bringing them down, and I really don't want to do anything to anger the Maratha Confederacy because they're right next to me in Ceylon, and if they really wanted to declare war on me, they could push me out of India entirely, which would lose a lot of trade for the East India Company, of course. Will destroy the company entirely. Back in Europe, Genoa are going to attack Voss's army. They're bringing triple the numbers, but of course it's all non-professional units. Our army very professional and experienced, but at breaking point in terms of its current losses. So really we just have to hold one more time, try and break the enemy's morale so their numbers can't be brought to effect. Let's give this battle a go. You can moan, but it's not up to me. Every ship we've crossed has confirmed it. We and the Spanish are brothers again. In fact, those Spanish ships we passed were traders. They're ferrying goods from America to Amsterdam on King Wilhelm's behalf. So yes, you heard the course I ordered. We're bringing the line about. If it's any consolation, remember our pay is back there. The West India Company doesn't have any treasuries out here. Not yet, I suppose I should probably say. Anyway, there are Frenchmen in America, and ships under French colours are now our prey. As one wind dies, another blows. You'll all still get your fill of riches, don't worry. I'll get on with it before I give you a real reason to frown. So here we are on the battlefield with Voss deploying right in the corner with his super thin line. You can see how depleted those infantry regiments are. And yes, deploying as far away as we can from their fort because they do have mortars inside with these very brilliant red coats. Looking pretty good, that mortar team. And we are sufficiently far away that they can't fire. And you probably know by now what that means. The AI is going to try and use their mortars to do something. And that something is nothing at all effectively. They're going to use them as a melee unit. And as they were wandering in towards our position on the battlefield, they got ambushed by 2 squads of my cav, who just completely flattened that unit, completely disappearing underneath them and very rapidly defeated. So that's one enemy unit down. Now in comes the rest of their infantry. Now I actually started experiencing a little bit of an issue with my deployment position here because I'm so close to the edge of the map that when I attempt to get my cavalry to go around the back of the enemy, I have to go really close to their regiments because the lines, the edges of the map are so near to where I deployed. So all of my cavalry actually coming under fire as they try and get into flanking positions. Luckily for me, it's fire from citizen militia. The enemy's real troops were in their centre, and the fire from those citizens is super inaccurate and slow, so really no damage done, morale shocks inflicted, but nothing long term. Here's the enemy's main body of troops in the centre. They've got 2 squads of garrisoned line infantry, also very stunningly dressed. I think the Genoans have pretty good fashion sense, but is it going to pull a victory through for them? Our line, super thin, just one man thick in places. But of course, in the era before fire by rank is researched from both factions, a line of a single man is just as powerful as a full regiment because only the front line fires. So our army is actually more powerful than it looks. It's got all the bite of a full army. It just doesn't have the resilience to take multiple volleys of enemy fire and reinforce its losses. So what we need to do is end the battle as soon as possible, basically. And we're going to do that using our cavalry. Our 4 cavalry regiments are mostly intact. They're all at pretty high levels of strength. So we're going to really exploit this first here, destroying this unit of armed citizenry. They were sort of camouflaged in the forest, but we found them and totally wiped them out. The same thing happening on the other side. The shock of being hit by these cavalry basically routs the citizenry, and then they're just slaughtered by the melee attacks of the horsemen as they attempt to escape. So that's really good news. That means all of our infantry can focus on the enemy's real infantry in the centre. This unit of citizenry getting drawn into the melee as we charge in to slash away through their ranks. Not going to survive long, probably just go to round right away. And they're already taking a lot of casualties among their actual infantry. As you can see, lots of bodies on the floor. This first unit starting to rout, having lost a third of its men. Our line still looking pretty good. We do have more professional infantry. None of them are garrison units, they're proper units, and their experience giving them superior accuracy and reload speed. So our really dodgy looking line is doing lots of damage to the enemy. They can't amass enough firepower to actually break through our tiny line. And right now our cavalry have found the enemy's general at the back. We've got 2 units engaging their general, and right about now their general goes down. Didn't actually see where it was, somewhere in this melee. Someone dies, and that's going to have a very big effect on the enemy's morale, which is already going to be dropping because they can see they're losing the battle. All of their citizenry are now in full retreat, along with one of their garrison units, leaving them with only 1 unit of line infantry actually under their control. My artillery making sure those units don't come back from routing by scaring them with extra shots, and there goes that last unit. Still most of its troops alive, only 10% casualties taken by them, but they are not going to hang around to see how this battle goes. They've severely underestimated that tiny line of troops that Voss put across the field. You can see there that unit actually starting to break up. The enemy were just about starting to inflict the casualties they needed to deny us firepower, but the battle is now over. Just over 100 losses for our side, over 2,000 losses for the enemy. A devastating result for Genoa. Both sides probably going to come away with about 1,000 troops left, but our troops are better. So the long-term result of this siege is pretty much settled, and there you can see the cavalry getting tons of kills for virtually no losses. A superb performance from them. Suffice to say, I wouldn't have hurried back if this was what they had to offer. You might imagine that their leading man, their king, would know you actually need to raise an army before declaring war. They had all the time in the world to prepare, and knew of our approach, well, perhaps 6 months in advance if they were perceptive enough, and then this happens. Nice to win, but you must understand that I had my hopes up for something a little more, well, thrilling is probably the best way to put it. Now what's that face? I think it's easy enough to understand. You have your games of cards, and I have this, the game of war. There's no real difference in the end, not for men like us. And at least here the stakes are a little higher than gold. So that win means our siege of Genoa will continue, but now the Barbary States are making some aggressive moves. They send a bunch of 6th rates to attack our fleet. I just bring them down with an auto-resolve, thinking that's easy enough. But the Barbary States have more in store. Seeing that their fleet was destroyed, they now decide to send in more ships to, I don't know, just get destroyed as well. So there goes another one. I thought, well, that's got to be the end of that, but actually they had another one. They did have another ship that they wanted to bring in here. So each time I'm just intercepting them. They're obviously trying to go somewhere, probably trying to raid my port, and my fleet is just intercepting and destroying them. This time I actually captured that Zebek, but I didn't want to add it to my fleet, so we're going to sell it for prize money. So nice one from the Barbary States, and then in the most hilarious move, they come right after that and go, you know what, do you want peace? Having just lost all of their navy, they're at war with basically everyone. We're going to say yes to peace so that their navy stops trying to steal our trade. So that was a good little result there from that unexpected series of naval engagements. So starting the next turn, Savoy is experiencing a strike. Public order still not good. The fleet under Almonda has been damaged in those auto-resolves, so I'm going to spend some money getting them back up to shape. Now Voss has not got a definitive advantage over the garrison in Genoa. I asked them to surrender and they refused, and I didn't really want to auto-resolve an assault here because although we have that advantage, the units are so weak they might just be destroyed by an auto-resolve. So instead, we're going to play it safe. We're just going to replenish the army and get it back to full strength whilst we wait. So the French army still hasn't moved, so it's time for us to put together our main force to go in for the decisive engagement. I've got a full stack of troops now ready to attack, although with no artillery and too many cavalry. It's not an ideal force, a little scrappily put together there. Now as we come in, we actually have a giant advantage because although the enemy had lots of regiments, they were all already destroyed from their war with Westphalia, so they didn't really have any troops. So we just walked over them, pushing those away, a few survivors escaping, but really now nothing between us and taking Alsace-Lorraine. So actually this is much easier than I thought it was going to be. I didn't need to prepare as much. Now jumping over to India, I've got Admiral Dufresne preparing a fleet to go to the East Indies. He sailed over here a while ago, back while we were still at war with Spain, planning to go and take the East Indies by force, but now his war fleet's just going to go over there and see if there are any trade nodes still free and occupy any that are free. Almonda getting tons of experience, we just saw there for all those battles against Barbary states, so that is good as well. Now, moving on once again, the French come in with a surprise attack. A fleet appears from the Americas and drops a stack in France. So, that's really changed the game. I didn't think that was going to happen. We've got riots in Savoy, the public order situation really bad, and it's almost definitely going to encounter a revolution if we don't actually put them down a little bit more. What I ended up doing was just moving units out of Voss's besieging army to go and calm Savoy down. The issue, of course, is that Voss's army is getting weaker and weaker when I do this, but I thought it was okay because the enemy inside, are so weak as well. We've just had an election, so we have a new selection of ministers ruling our nation, but they aren't as good as the old set, so I'm going to be losing some bonuses there, which is unfortunate. Now, I decided to come in and see if I could micromanage this a little bit to make it better. In particular, the Justice Minister was what I was interested in because it increases the repression of all of your settlements, so that's just a big boost to public order across the board, and I could use that right now, especially with the Savoy situation. Now, I noticed the current Treasury Minister has traits that actually make him quite good as a Justice Minister, so I'm going to swap those two guys around. So now we have a higher level Justice Minister, we do get a little bonus there to our repression, so that is quite handy. I also noticed our Head of State wasn't particularly good. Now, what you can do is just kick people out, I think only once per election term, and you get a random replacement, but the random replacement was just as bad, so that's no good. Now, somehow, that actually made public order go down a lot, like -5. I don't know how that switch around really works. I thought I was improving public order, but actually I made it worse. Possibly over time it will now go back up to a higher level. So now in the East Indies, I'm having a look around, and there actually are 2 trade nodes that haven't been occupied by anyone, so we can get a little bit of our old profit back. The Spanish still there with their fleet. Of course, we would have been fighting them just a few turns ago, but now we are here on a mission of peace, so we're just going to sit around right now. I'm going to need to build some smaller, less expensive to upkeep ships to come in and occupy these trade nodes rather than using 6th rates. Callumber has arrived in America. Still going to take 2 turns, though, to actually get over to where Louisiana's navy is, so we don't want to attack until we're there, so we can just blockade their navy inside the ports right away or destroy it and then start taking their territory before they do any damage. So jumping back to Europe, we're now ready to attack Alsace-Lorraine. We've got an advantage here. Our army bigger than the enemy's, although all of our units are depleted from that auto-resolve earlier. The enemy lots of garrison units. So we're going to besiege them and take a look at the other French army, which is really strange actually. Loads of native troops and artillery with very limited traditional line infantry there. So a strange force. They've obviously just levied it up out of nothing from America and brought it over. But the stakes of this battle are basically increased by the presence of that army, because if we can attack Alsace-Lorraine and win, France, including all of their armies, will be destroyed. I was checking here that Westphalia were at war with France because I was confused as to why they weren't reinforcing me in this siege assault. I thought those units are close enough, they should come in and help, but apparently not. So now, I'm going to try and make this really dangerous siege assault. The enemy have artillery forts, which means attacking, especially with an infantry-focused army, is going to be extremely deadly for our side. But the stakes are really high, as I said, because we're not just taking Alsace-Lorraine, we're destroying all of France's forces across the world in this one battle, so hopefully it'll be worth it. Where years of campaigning from the Westphalians had failed, the massive Dutch home army, raised with the riches of the West and East India companies, was finding success. The French government was in a critical state, forced to levy Native American tribespeople in a last-ditch attempt to retake Paris from the west. But this timing was damning, for Dutch forces had already laid eyes upon the last fort between themselves and the final bastion of French rule, Strasbourg. With no siege equipment and no experienced officers, it was reasonable to assume the Dutch army would fear the city's defences. However, with the French Americans marching closer to Paris by the day, the order was given for a human wave assault on the fort's high walls. Thanks for watching. We'll face that deadly fort battle and try to organise that war with Louisiana in the next episode of Sinews of War.